Today, what we try to do is just to streamline some of the main, let's say, contents and concepts that would be of value to you, and you would be able, using them, to bring out the best possible result that would be able to reflect the solution that you want to offer. Okay, so either in this, on the grounds of this, the project of this workshop of this series, or under the collaboration pillar that we will see later on. So we will see hence how from the user research insights we can move to design. So what some principles, some guidelines we can consider, and then what is a prototype? Okay, so how can we bring all this knowledge into a prototype? We will discuss a part of design. It's also the testing. We call it usability testing. It comes also into various forms, but today we will just touch a couple of flavors of what it is, of how you can do it. We have also shared some insights regarding the analysis that we can do from data that we collect from exploratory and discovery phases from research data. There's a different angle there. We will discuss it, and from then on we will see how can we put things into practice. So the design phase hence is the third, let's say, phase or stage in this process or the method of user-centered design approach. And the idea is to again working with our teams. Okay, working with our teams. It's something that we keep repeating, but it's super important because at this stage, so far, what we have tried to do is to collect and analyze data and to try and understand and formulate the problem and have an in-depth analysis of the requirements based on which we would need now to interpret them, and we will need to put them forward in order to have a product that it would have a specific look and feel and an experience, let's say. So the stages that we have seen, just to recap a bit from the previous session, we have seen so far, therefore, the business value, how do we do field research, how do we create persona, why persona is important in such solutions, in user-centered solutions or human-centered solutions. And from then on, we have created some user journeys which reflect some typical tasks, actions that users take in time. Okay, so always time as a reference. And from then on, we have multiple user stories that we have tried to gather, let's say, what would be some specific contextual requirements or needs that we would have over the specific steps of the user journey, right? And then what we want to do is, from the business case that we have defined, to move into design. So we want to translate the user stories into designs. And if you remember, again, all this information of who we are actually designing is something very important. What are the goals? What are the triggers and steps? All this needs now to be in place, needs to be clarified in order to be able to stream even more down, to go in more specific of what is the design problem that we have. Okay, so all the problem of the user, for example, a challenge might have frustration points, if you remember, we need to translate them into design problem in order to be able to create the respective conditions and design interaction, let's say, scenarios that would help tackle the specific challenges. So I'm bringing in now the example of the IQ journalism project, just for you to see how this storyline reflects, let's say, the steps, the more theoretical steps that we discussed earlier. You saw that from all the analysis that we did earlier and the business case definition. I repeat, just as a refresher, that it is like so the business case back then was that our communication and media studies department needs a way, an intelligent advisor, in other words, for predicting the perceived quality in Greek news article for journalists and editors to improve the quality and engagement of online news articles. Okay, so this is the priority business case that we have, or use case that we have prioritized, and this is something similar that you should have done with your project, or will do with your project. Okay, this is the starting point that we discussed last time. And then we said that we specified it a bit more in terms of persona, of main benefits, of impact that it might have. And we also, since we have a priority, we went ahead a step further, a step deeper, and we said that this is a specific persona that we have that has specific needs and frustration points that we want to tackle. And based on those, we generated the user stories, okay, that might reflect a specific point in time in the business life of this journalist, where in our case is to write the article focusing on the narrative elements, okay, so through a software, an AI-driven software. And this is the user story that we had earlier. So as a journalist, I would like to receive real-time editing recommendations on various aspects, including language, quality, subjective level, emotionality, entertainment, and social media, so that I can improve the quality of my work and engage readers more effectively, right? So this is, let's say, one angle that we have, and we would like in the end a solution in order to be able to address it. And so what we do now, because we try to make it, to translate this user story into a design problem, okay? So a design problem, as we say, has a point of view, a POV, okay? This is a very common term when we're talking about design creation, the POV, okay? So far, we have seen, therefore, the as-is situation. Now we discuss the to-be situation, okay? That's another important differentiation. You remember at the very beginning of our previous session that we discussed about the problem space and the solution space. Now we move from the problem space, where user stories might also have a good, let's say, anchor there, so to the solution space. And we want to see what is the design challenge, okay, and for the specific persona that we want to address. Again, here we have a specific template that we can use, okay, so we have a user need and an insight, and I will show you with an example. I think it's easier to understand what do we mean. So this is, again, from the project of IQ Journalism. So what you see here, it's just a number of user flows, a number of use cases. And in order to be able to take advantage of this, let's say, use cases, I need to be able to connect specific viewpoints. And one viewpoint, let's say, for the journalist for creating a new article. So in order to understand how I will create a new article, it means that I need to address a specific POV. And this POV says that the journalist needs a way to upload an article in order to process it further. Okay, so this is a point of view that your design needs to be able to address. Okay, so now how this will happen, it is a matter of all this discussion that we will do and the brainstorming that you will do in your teams, how such a design would look like in order to be able to address this viewpoint. Similarly, we have the scenario for this preview score and get advice. You recall that we're talking about an AI solution that would be able to give me some predictions about the quality or the engagement of my article. So in order to be able to satisfy the specific use case, we say that this design should have the viewpoint that the journalist needs a way to review the predicted performance of an article in order to make the necessary adjustments. Okay, so how would an interaction flow, a design flow, specific features would look like in order for me as a journalist to review this predicted performance of the article that I have earlier somehow uploaded. Okay, so this is what we say here. And in order to address these questions, we need to create designs. And design, we have to imagine design not just a free drawing, of course, but as a system. Okay, a design is a system that it is composed of various components, of elements. They have adhered to specific logic and guidelines, and they somehow all work together. All these elements interact together in order to bring out a smooth result that would, let's say, ensure a seamless user experience, as we say. Okay, so in other words, the user should be able to have the feeling that is not lost, that is fully engaged with the task, has the support, and has the right affordances in order to be able to interact as it should be to complete in the easiest possible way the task that he wants to complete. And since we are talking about a system, if we break this system down, we would say that we have some dimensions again for you to get, let's say, the full picture. Of course, we will not discuss all these components, but a product, if you think about it, even from your media organization or websites, or let's say current products, you would see that you have to maintain a visual identity, that it will be able to be the same and to relate to your organizations, for example, a brand. This is super important. You have a library with the various components that you can use and you can reuse. Okay, so at the more technical level, you have specific, let's say, design principles as guidelines that more or less govern the behavior of how the user interfaces, let's say, are actually behaving when you have specific triggers or you take specific actions. And from then on, we have style guides, where here we have more or less, we refer to the design language that we will apply in order for this interaction paradigms, let's say, to have a visual effect. And lastly, we have the interaction paradigms. So the specific logic. We want to understand how the various buttons, menus, features would work together in order to be able to offer this enhanced user experience that we want. So there are many models or ways of how to approach design principles. One of the most common theories or perspectives, let's say, that we use, it's called Gestalt laws. More or less, those are like as a set of rules, okay, so that we try to understand how, let's say, the creation of let's say, the subsequent parts of an image, okay, or of a screen, if you want, how they can work together and form a larger one that it would be perceived in a simple and effective way. Okay, so this is just it comes from the German school of thought and psychologists back to 20s and 40s. And in reality, what we care to understand is that when we're talking about designs, we primarily care about perception. Okay, it's the human perception, how the users perceive, accommodate information, new information, how they calculate them, how they're getting ready to respond to specific, let's say, stimuli or triggers that we give them, or how easy they are to relate to prior knowledge that they might have regarding specific tasks. So all these, let's say, cognitive abilities are, let's say, should be considered during the design phase. So we should have them in the back of our head during the design phase in order to be able to construct, to create features and interactions that would resonate with the tasks, okay, of the users and what they want them to do. And just to give it to put it a bit more into perspective, what do we mean? I'm sure that by reading this specific Gestalt laws, you all can relate to some examples of your mind. So those are not, let's say, designs are not actually, defined abstractly, but they follow some rules which might be like the law of similarity, which more or less says that similar things tend to appear or group together. Okay, so this is one thing that should keep in mind when you have a bunch of features and you try to think, how can I, let's say, locate them into my screen, into my design. Okay, so usually when we have similar items that they refer to similar actions, we can group them together. We have the law of simplicity, where in principle says that the law, when you're presented with a set of ambiguous or complex objects, usually our brain, they're trying to simplify this as much as possible. Okay, so we know that even in nature, when interact even with the physical environments, this interaction between complex and simple, it always takes place. Okay, but in the end, the simpler construction is the one that wins, let's say. And from then on, we have the law of proximity. So again, things that are close together seem to relate in the minds of people more. Okay, so this is what you should always have in mind. Or items that they follow a specific sort of a pattern, a line pattern. Again, they seem that they somehow connected to each other. Or items that they belong to even there might be connected items, if they are, our mind tends to decompose them in such a way in order to bring a full picture out and to make it, let's say, relevant to prior experience. And similarly, again, we have a law which refers to the common region, where again, items that they locate in the same region, okay, into our interface, again, they're perceived as they belong together. And just to give you an example for the law of similarity, what you can see in this here sort of picture is that there are circles that they appear to work together. And although they are circles, you can see that our mind is able to decode it as a triangle, where triangle are the smaller parts as well that it is around them. Okay, and also with the law of proximity, you see that you can understand by intuition, or the way that you perceive it, is that the specific, let's say, circles, there are specific circles that they might belong together and they formulate a group. Okay, so or you can see some that are similar or might not similar, although in situations they might not be fully one-to-one somehow associated. And again, here you can see the subsequent parts of an image that, although we do not have the complete image at hand, at once we can induce the information that this specific image might relate to a ball. Okay, so what we want to say is that when we try to design or to create our prototypes, we try to have some basic guidelines in mind of how people or audience perceives the design that we give them. Okay, so that's why we try to keep, let's say, informations that they share some similarity together, or to have meaningful groups, or to have patterns that they have a logical consequence instead of are disconnected on the various parts of a screen. And then we move to the guidelines. When you're saying about guidelines, is more or less we have to relate it to more visual representation, the visual language, as we say. So in other words, this principle that we showed earlier, they can be reflected in 100 different ways. So depending on the organization, depending on on the style that we want to put forward, there are various different kinds of layouts, okay, or guidelines that someone could use, design guidelines always that someone could use in order to put them forward. There are open libraries again on the internet that you can use or reuse, but you can see, for example, here this is a Google material design system where you see that the various kinds of buttons and navigation field or fields that we text fields that we insert information in order to take, for example, some actions. So you see that all those, they have a specific look and feel depending on the action that we want to apply. And usually there is a big variety as a library, and depending on what we want to do, we mix and match, okay, and until we get the result that we want. But we do not usually create new ones, okay? So we try to stick to the visual paradigms, the visual guidelines that we have at hand. Here we have Apple, for example. So you see that Apple, if you see, no matter what is the content of an app in Apple, in principle, the look and feel is the same of how you interact with these applications, okay? So this is, so you know, for example, that you will find the save button always at the specific location on the screen, or you know that when you have overlay, let's say, components, they will be able to function no matter of what application you're running on a specific way, etc. Another example is of Microsoft, the Fluent 2 design system. Again, here, specific combo boxes or how you create your lists or how you create your drop-down menus, etc. All this is part of this design system. Again, with the same with SAP. Here, you see what we try to do is to maintain our brand identity and the look and feel, and through the designs that and the visual components that we put forward. So, and having therefore this information in mind, the very next thing is to be able to have a tool, a space that we can create the designs that we want. And as designs that there might be open and you can use them, there's also some prototyping tools that you can use to create your low fidelity or high fidelity prototypes. Low fidelity, you mean for those prototypes that there might be, let's say, just some even hand drawings that they don't primarily communicate any visual sort of identity, okay, or colors, let's say, to put it simple, or specific visual brand ID to communicate your designs. There might be black and white. While by high fidelity are to the pixel defined of how these prototypes should be created. And we say to the pixel because usually what happens after is that the development comes forward, and based on how you have defined your designs, they will code your specific applications. Okay. And in order to create this design, we have a number of tools. Okay, we have tools to create this simple lo-fi, simple wireframes that they give you the components. So Balsamiq is one, and it's also open, that you can use, and there are specific components that you can use in combination, and you bring your design forward. And from then on, we go into more, let's say, advanced tools that they also help you bring high fidelity pixel perfect designs. Whereas the Axure or can be Figma, for example, or Sketch. So an example of Figma is this one. It's one of the prototyping tools that they used extensively nowadays in the market, due also to the recent incorporation of the generative AI capabilities that it has. But usually it's a web-based environment that you can also collaborate with various designers, various colleagues can work together over a design, can leave comments, can spread ideas. There are many tools that that you can draw, let's say, from simple boxes to more sophisticated buttons. So there are huge libraries there that you can use. And in principle, you have the various actions on the left-hand side, and then you have the main space where you can create your designs. And just to show you a couple of examples of what we mean by prototypes, starting from the IQ journalism project. This is low-fidelity prototypes, black and white, no visual identity. Let's say just the first ideas sketched out of how this tool that will help me predicting the quality of my article would look like. And you see that somewhere there should be, let's say, a menu, and there should be the document title. I should be able, I'm just drive you through the thinking now of how, let's say, a designer could, let's say, bring the research input that it has from the previous phases into design. Okay, so my elements, my main requirements is that I want to have some intelligence incorporated. So the question is, if I have the flexibility to turn this intelligence on or off, for example, this could be one option of how you approach it. I should have somewhere that I upload, if you remember, my article. So there should be a text area. And from then on, I should have a toolbar that you will be able to apply some actions on this text area. Okay, so this is the very first idea sketched out. As the next one is, I would also wanted to have some more specific actions for this article. So from editing it, from re-uploading it, from renaming it, etc. So the control actions that they usually have for all the objects. And then if I'm talking about intelligence, how can I imagine that this intelligent advisor would work, let's say, right? So, and in that case, the team, the very first ideas of the team were that there would be the main article, and from then on the right-hand side, once you say that I have the intelligent mode on, then the computational models at the back would be able to return some results after the analysis that they do on this article, and it would say that, you know, you have, let's say, an overall score of 82, and from then on, this is a predictor. Okay, so what is, let's say, might be the quality in that case, but this quality could break down. What does it mean actually? Good quality it might mean many things. If, let's say, emits some emotionality sort of levels, if it has structured language, etc., etc. So, but at the moment you might not even know what these features might be. The important thing for you as a designer is that you have a space where you will be able to accommodate at a later stage some features that they will come from the AI model, right? So when you say that I have an overall score somewhere, an aggregated view, let's call it like that, and from then on you have a number of factors that you would be able to see even further, or you would be able to edit. And then again, you would have the chance, what we would like as a team is to have the chance to tune this model, right? To have the control over the model. So, and this is the whole point also of the user-centered approach, that AI would be able to provide a guided result, if you want, like that. And then here we can therefore specify, let's say, the assessment, if you would be considering, let's say, the genre, if you could, the medium that the specific articles might have been, let's say, as a data set mounted, what kind of articles are working, if it's the length that they might have, etc. Okay, so again, some ideas of how, let's say, talking a design language, putting in a design problem, my requirements could, let's say, reflect it. And here is some of the features that I discussed earlier. So you see that we discussed about readability. By readability, we mean for this article, we want to see what is the word length or the average of the word length, the sentence length, the readability score, etc. So a number of features that you might have in your AI model, depending on your solution, in other words. But what we care again now is not the content, but rather how this can be visualized. Okay, and you see that in order for those features to be visible, I need on a design level to create a space for it. And if you recall from the principles we discussed earlier of similarity, for example, or proximity, or the grouping, you see that these items should work together because they belong in the same group of information. Okay. Otherwise, the user wouldn't be able to understand what do we mean by, let's say, sentences, etc. Okay. Under what context? And then we're moving on to the high fidelity prototypes. Okay, so here you see that we have a specific visual language that we have applied, specific design guidelines, a specific color palette, etc. And this therefore can be transformed. One way to transform it is, as you see now, with different distinctive, let's say, color coding of the various categories provided by the various features of that the model use about subjectivity, emotionality, entertainment, etc. Again, how do I select the various options that I want? There is always white with orange, and so there's specific design guideline that I follow. Green, it's always a selection for an action. Okay, so what is done or whatever actions that I want to take. Once we have designed our prototypes, one of the key sort of, let's say, requirements of the process of the design, of the user-centered design approach, is to validate, and to validate as early as possible. And that's why usually it's not bad at all, even the states that you are, to start with a low fidelity and the paper. So the paper and pencil is not just for the scope of this course. This is what I want to say, is that quick sketches that even professionals do. So as we talk, for example, in the team, there are designers that they translate directly what we say are words into designs. Okay, and they try therefore to give a picture to the requirements that they have been discussed, and to have an image that it's going to be easier, okay, according to studies, to be able to bring everybody on board that we're talking for the same thing. Therefore, quick sketches that put things in perspectives and with some very rough drawings, a very good start point. And from then on, you can go further, or you can test them. You can then receive feedback from your audience. The audience usually are the end users that will use the specific application. And by saying end users, I mean the personas that you have used and analyzed in order to be able to create the design in the first place. Okay, so usually the same personas, might be different people. Ideally, the same again wouldn't harm, okay? But people that they share the same profile can be used to test early the look and feel of our solution, if those are the features that translate their requirements at the end of the day, or the actions, if specific tasks that they do are fully captured from our solution, and these kind of things, okay? And in order to be able to test, to validate our designs, again, we need to follow a methodology. Okay, so there are various ways that you can test. You can test, let's say, very fast, if you want, by showing a design to someone and just asking for the top 3 feedback items, top 3 things that they like, they don't like. Or on the other end, there are designs that they follow a more formative, let's say, usability testing paradigm, where there you have a situation similar that we discussed in exploratory studies, where you have to create a scenario, you have to create a script, and from then on you hire end users that you will have 60 to 90-minute sessions with them, and one-to-one, and then you will let them interact with your prototype based on specific tasks that you give them, on predefined tasks that you give them, and you observe and you collect feedback that you will have to analyze. This is the more detailed, let's say, approach that it's of course highly advisable, especially for early, for new solutions, and early for new solutions in organization. Again, here, you remember we discussed about the Think Aloud protocol, and we always ask and try to squeeze out information where solution needs to be improved, or to what extent a user has completed a task or not completed a task, and how satisfied they were throughout the process. Okay, so this is things that you can extract from is responsibility of the moderator to extract from the end user, and from then and on to observe what they do. So primarily, so there are many factors that you can collect and you can measure when you test. Primarily, we are looking for, when we're talking about usability, we're talking about effectiveness, efficiency, satisfaction. Effectiveness, it means the accuracy of how well someone executes the tasks that we give them. Okay. So, and then I might see also that there might be users that they haven't even managed to complete, or they have big troubles and they needed a lot of help. So this is success with assistance. They needed a lot of help from the moderator in order to complete the tasks. For example, in the task that you saw earlier, upload an article. If this would be a super complex solution, someone wouldn't be able to find the upload button, or where the file is located, or what's the process to do it, or after it does it, where it's actually shown, or where is it visible. So all these kind of things that you can test the flow of uploading a file and where it's been visible in order to go to the next step. Efficiency, it's about effort. Okay, so how much effort someone needs to complete a task, how long does it take? So in your mind, for example, uploading a file might be a matter of, I don't know, 1 minute, right? But then you might see that there might be users that they indeed complete the task, but it took 3 minutes. Is it something acceptable for you or not, for your solution, for example, right? So this is the things that you try to understand, the accuracy with the time. And from then and on, it might be the clickstream. What is the path that someone followed to upload a file, or what were actually the erroneous sort of spaces that he was trying to access before uploads a file, right? So all this kind were actually clicked. It's another important sort of factor that we check. And then it's the satisfaction. There are many satisfaction surveys out there that you can use to understand whether the user liked the product in the end, or when I say product, I mean the specific business cases that you have tested, the specific prototype, yes? And there might be like system usability scale or WAMI, so there are many questionnaires out there standardized that you can give to the users and understand how easy it was, easy of use, how complex, if it generated frustration, if it would be information easily, the information in the space that interacted could be easily recorded from memory, or if it revisited, could be actually someone easily interact with it. If someone needs training to do it, something very important, right? Especially when introducing new solutions with AI enhancements, the question is if a simple user, if it's a journalist that has no, the literacy with AI is not that high, wouldn't be able to interact with it and understand what the system says in order to take action, or it needs extra training, right? Extra support by tool or offline. So all these are the things that you can test. And in order to collect them, of course, as for interviews, we need to do some preparation. And for the preparation, Primarily, we need to reflect on the existing knowledge that we have for the creation of the prototypes. We need to understand which are the features that we will test, because if a solution is big, so for example, if you have, let's say, 6, 7, and 8 interaction flows that might require each one 5 or 6 actions, this might take some time. And the question is, do you have this time at hand with the end users to test? And if not, what would be the priority to test in order not to lose the end user? As we said, to be able to have users on board, and even in their contextual space, it might be a time-consuming process, okay? So you don't really want to use the end user, it's your goal, okay? So it's very important to take the maximum. So a prioritization of what you want to test is super important at this stage of preparation. Then what you do once you have what you want to test based on prior knowledge and your prototype, you need, as we said, to simulate the real interaction flows with the user, to bring the solution to the real business life of the user. Okay, so if possible, for example, me as a journalist creating article, what is the conditions that I'm doing it? Is it, for example, 7 o'clock at night? Is it in a noisy environment? Is it so? I try to pick the space. I try to give the prototype in such conditions and simulate this scenario. It can be even fictitious, okay? You can ask someone to imagine that you're a journalist, that in a big media organization, that you are under pressure and you need to produce 2 articles per day, and your articles should have an acceptance of more than 80% and or audience, let's say, a clapping of, X%. So you put some constraints, some requirements in this scenario, and try to see how to simulate a real life case, and then you see how your prototype can reflect that. Okay, and then you develop it as is the task description. As we said, if it's a moderated, especially session with a moderator and note taker, you can recall from the interview. So it's a similar setting. You need to have a task script to guide the user in this scenario. Okay, so to tell him what is the first task, when is the second, when is the third, the purpose that this task exists into the whole scenario, etc. And just as an example, what you review by saying reflect to my knowledge, it means to all the research that I did during the discover and the exploration phase. And primarily, I'm paying emphasis to the user journeys and to the various more structured, analyzed information, let's say. Okay, so to the outcome of these phases. And I'm trying to understand, let's say, to have this end-to-end understanding of my solution in this context in order to be able to set my objectives for this test. Okay, and then once I do that, for the why, I get the various user flows that I have created. Okay, and I see how the various user stories that the POVs can work together, also always under the umbrella of my priority persona. And therefore, what I want to say is that, for example, from the POVs that I have created, I want to test definitely the create a new article. I want to test the set preferences and the previous score and get advice. So this might be 3 things that I want to test. Okay, so I give them priority. And I go later on in step 3, and I'm creating the flow for it. So, and this is a flow of text for task 1, for example. And I say upload a text file to see its predicted performance. You see that this flow has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 action steps. 6 action steps. So this simple sort of upload the file, right? So it means that from the very first screen that I need to click on start writing. Then I need to agree, okay, to some, let's say, conditions. Then I need to create my article, to click this button to create a new article. I need to upload it, to find it and upload it. I need to set my preferences, how the model will run at the back in order to receive the prediction that I want to revise. Okay, so this is a simulated scenario for task 1. Imagine if you would have 3, 4, 5, or 6 tasks based on the features that you want to test. You might have a number of actions there available, and an increased complexity, in other words, that you need to break it down into tasks to make it manageable for the user. Okay. So, but this flow is super important because this way you would know this is the baseline, as we say, or the golden thread, as we call it. So this is where the user should go. From then on, you see during interaction where the user actually goes. Has he actually found the create new article? Is it create new referring to an article or to something else, for example, right? Or he was looking on the left menu, or does he did he actually understand what set article preference means? Is it clear for their task, or it needs help? So this is the things that you discuss and you observe and you see during execution what's going on. And then finally, this is the script that I was talking earlier, the validation script, as for interviews guides, has a specific structure with some more open questions, an introduction to the scenario, to the role. So about the context, etc. You have a part which is the more specific part about the tasks that you want to extract information upon, and you might have a part about the surveys, okay, about the satisfaction that we mentioned earlier, or any other sort of feedback that you want to receive. You're free to put whatever you like, as long as it fits to the 60 or the 90 minutes that you will use, let's say, in this example. Google Forms is a tool that you can use, or Forms from Microsoft, perfectly fine to use and guide the users through this process. Yeah, I want to say something I forgot now, but anyway, this is an example of the IQ journalism example. So you see that we just loaded a scenario at the very beginning for the user to understand what is the article about, to get a feeling, so not to be a cold start for them, because we asked them to evaluate if they're happy about the prediction, how they receive the prediction, right? So they need to understand what article it was about. And then, as a journalist, supposedly wrote this article about the Donald Trump going to jail, and then they were supposed to upload it to understand its quality. Okay, that was a scenario. That's why we make familiar the end users about the script, about the article. Then those are the questions that we ask them, the specific questions that we also received information upon. Upload text file, change the article preferences to see if it affects the performance, for example. So, for example, if we change the genre or the length of the article for the prediction, etc., or change the phrases or some words into the articles to see if the articulation would be better, for example, etc. Then we have some survey questions. In that case, we wanted to see whether we gave them some contrasting attributes to understand some reactions of the users. Okay, so if, for example, the contents of this prototype were abstractive or supportive, complicated or easy, inefficient or efficient, and then we were just gathering data on a Likert scale. And similarly, you could have the system usability scale or user experience, so questionnaire, so any other of tools to collect information upon on a Likert scale sort of data collection method. And then you would have more open questions at the very end where they would relate to what did you like the most, what did you like least, what you wish to have that you haven't seen, etc. Okay, so again, you can close smoothly. So I open smoothly, introductory about yourself, your role, etc. I go to the heavy stuff, task execution, collect feedback, and then I go in survey, and I'm closing smoothly with some general impression questions. And once we have that, we execute. Again, I talked about it. Also, we saw it during interviews. Ideally, if moderated, 60, 90 minutes, one moderator, 1 to 2 note takers, 1 observer, and from then on, 6 to 8 end users for the same persona use case. It's a good, again, standpoint to see information repeating itself. If not, of course, you can go for bigger samples. What you should have in mind, the difference with interviews here, just to not get confused, is that in interviews you didn't have any prototype. Okay, so there it were more exploratory reactions. So I was trying to find what is the problem. I was trying to understand. Here I have defined already a to-be situation. So I have transformed my requirements, user research requirements, into design. I have it in place, and I want to test it with a specific scenario, what the user think about it. This is a totally different viewpoint, all right? So this is just to emphasize, just to understand the difference. And of course, you can have it on site or on remote, okay? We said that preference is on site to get the contextual input and see environment that the user works on interruptions that may have during, for example, article creation or prediction assessment and evaluation, or remote via user Zoom and sharing an environment. You can always give the control to the user to interact, but be careful now with GDPR restrictions, especially in Europe, what you can share and you cannot share. So, for example, it would be advisable to avoid, for example, especially if you record the session, to show the users' names on the screen, okay? Or you should always give a disclaimer at the very beginning that GDPR disclaimer. There are also some standardized ones that primarily you collect anonymized data, and that you will save them for a specific period of time as long as the analysis takes place, more or less. So all these things you need to take the consent. So consent is very important, okay? So don't forget about that, because then end users intentionally even might come back to and create problems. Okay, there are many examples in the past. And as a final touch, the question is what I do after, right? So I collected my data, I ran my studies, I collected my data, then I have, as you saw, open questions, I have Likert scale questions, you might have telemetric questions, so capturing usage data of click streams and time for users. So all this needs to come together. So qualitative, quantitative data come together in order to extract the user insights that will drive some decisions of what changes or updates needs to be made for your prototype, right? And the very first thing that you do straight after is, especially as note takers and moderators, is to discuss what you saw. It's very important, and because to avoid having any memory decay effects. So it is therefore you just try to run over the day what happened, what you see, what you like, You take some notes. You try to clarify some ambiguous observations, especially if you have different opinions, and then you try to reflect of what you wrote. As note takers, it's important that you clean your notes again, and that you have a clear structured data set in front of you without interpreting, because you haven't analyzed yet, but it should be clear what you write. And if you had some extra fillings or whatsoever, you should capture them separately to make sure that you have a complete data set. In the end, you should have, therefore, this ideally structured qualitative contents, structured, I mean, by question, by task, across the various end users and across the various note takers. And you would have an Excel file, maybe Excel or CSV file, with the various questions from your survey data and the response to them. So as you know, Forms or Google Forms, so they can automatically generate this kind of views and data sets for you to work more on this. So this is very helpful for the next step of your analysis, because what we try to do in principle is to create one view of all these data sets. Okay, so we try to bring the information, the data from across the various note takers, across the various customers in one view, and to make sense of them. So primarily what we try to understand is to understand what are the usability issues, right, that have been generated, what are the very first problems that we've seen, then the negative, if you want, all right. So we like the positive, but the negative is, and especially a concentration point for us, that we need to break it down further during the analysis, and to be able to understand where does it actually relate, to which interaction step, to which screen, what action followed, what action was before, why it generated this problem, etc. So we do this kind of assessment and evaluation in order to decide in the end for which one would be our priority. And this is very important because you might come up, for example, with so the feedback items that you might collect might be 200, right? So 150. So it's a lot of information. And then you need to understand which are negative, which are positive, where do they relate, and then to have a number of features to usability issues, sorry, to sort. Okay, and then you need to understand which are priority to decide which ones will go ahead to fix them or not. Yes, and this is analysis. You can do it again using the theme analysis that we saw in the last session during interviews. The same principles can apply here to create clusters and codes of the various information. You can do it online, you can do it on site using design thinking approaches and post-its. So you can extract therefore all this information from the data set. You can bring them and use color coding to see which are negative, positive, to which task they belong, which are repeated, how many users, which was wishes, problems, etc. So you can create such a view. And then the quantitative feedback, you can also bring it into Excel and apply any calculations you want to find frequencies. If you're talking about Likert scales, to understand which, let's say, what's the percentage of users that reacted positive on specific item, what were some means, some medians, what were scores and SU scores, etc. So you apply this kind of analysis in parallel. And once you do that, the main one of the things is to report, okay? And again, I think as media organizations, you have your own reporting systems, even internally. But what is important is the reason this is important is because we bring, by reporting, we mean that we answer specific questions, okay? So when I test something, I have usually an objective. So have I satisfied my objective? Are those insights in line? So by asking specific questions on my data set, I am able to create some reports where am I true, where am I wrong, what things for improvement, etc. Okay, so you can do that in various ways like PowerPoint, etc. I'm sure that you have the experience with it. And just to close the loop and the session for today, before we discuss any points that you have also in relation to your project, in case that you wonder what is after, it's the deliver stage. Just one slide for that. So we have our designs, we have validated. The very next thing is to code it, right? Of course, for the scope of this project and the collaboration pillar, coding is not included. Costa, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is ideally up to Hi-Fi prototype that we will simulate flows with someone to interact, but we don't have, of course, the chance for coding, but this is what comes after. So to encode it and to deliver it, to put it up, to publish it into the market, and to keep track on it, to monitoring it. Okay, so we have again collecting various data, usage data, to what extent users interact with the features that we have, how happy they are, do they get, for example, the recommendations that we expect them to receive based on all the analysis that we did around the specific user profiles and the designs that we did, etc. So And once we do that, we feed it back into our designs. Okay, it's an iterative process, as we said, the UCD, in order to improve it. So I think this iteration is a key here. Okay, so don't expect to be perfect, or don't stress out if you're not perfect at the beginning. If you're not perfect at the beginning, it's good, because if you did a lot of research and you have a lot of diversified opinions around the specific prototype, it's good to identify it early enough before you go to development. If you go to development, then things are getting more costly or time-consuming, and it's going to be very hard even to justify it to your upper management. You remember in the previous sessions we said that we sign a kind of agreement, let's say, of the project manager mostly, of what this project will be and what it will do and what it will deliver. Okay, so this is what you have to report in the end. So it's great if you see problems early enough around design, low fidelity even stage, that you can quickly tweak things and change them before you have to change huge chunks of code that relate to specific architectures and specific models, etc., and things are getting complicated.